for most men, would you agree that compensation for a lot of us is as young boys, even as grown men, it typically comes from validation through academia or sports as activity of some sort to get the approval? Would you feel that's a fair assessment?
Absolutely. So it's if young boys aren't properly taken through a rite of passage, particularly as they're hormonally changing, they're transitioning physiologically, and when I say transitioning, I'm not talking about to what is the word contemporary that is used contemporarily around transitioning genders or anything like that. I'm talking about transitioning from boyhood to manhood, right? Like there is a physiological transition. The hormone levels surge, testosterone surges. The way a boy starts computing the world, understanding himself, his self-worth, his value, friendships, peer groups, you know, it's the gang mentality, the way a boy processes his own value and his own strength and weaknesses in relation to his peers and to his group. All of that starts to change at a certain age, and it's a little different, like a range, maybe like from 11 to 14, somewhere there, maybe even a little younger, right? But if he is not taken through a rite of passage by familiar individuals, aka another man, or a group, ideally a group of males, like a father or a primary father figure and his peers, right? And that rite of passage looks very different cross-culturally. You know, going back hundreds or thousands of years ago and going back to tribal culture, those rites of passage were pretty intense and pretty rough. Now, I can comment right or wrong. We can just park that for a second. But there are elements of a rite of passage that are required to make it a rite of passage, right? Challenge is part of that. Solitude and or isolation is part of that. Deprivation of some sort of what's familiar is part of that. Could be deprivation from the mother. Like the mother needs to let that boy go. That's part of that rite of passage, right? The father needs to let that boy go as part of the rite of passage. Deprivation could be no food or very little water, or you know, the amenities that you're used to are taken from you, right? Uncertainty, mystery is part of that. These are sort of pillars of that rite of passage, and that needs to be deliberate and intentional. That's another pillar. When we don't have that, and I'm not making this up, like I'm from wonderful scholars who are way before me, right? I'm standing on the shoulders of giants when I say these things. I think there's a lot of value in those rites of passage. Now, if boys don't have that, which vast majority of Western civilization, most civilization contemporarily doesn't have that, right? They will create their own, and they will create it in extremes, and they will create it through the material world because that's tangible, that's obvious, right? And so it will be through athletics, it will be through academia, it will be through dominating business, wherever it leads them. Like it will lead to power accumulation and resource accumulation. Whatever validates their existence and their worthiness, it will be harnessing a specific skill set or a set of skill sets where they are the best. They have to be number one. So hyper competitiveness comes in, but as a compensation. I'm not saying competitiveness is bad. It's necessary and it's great. I love it. But it comes in as a compensation. The come from very much matters. And so when a boy doesn't have many things, but when a boy doesn't have a rite of passage that's deliberate, and there isn't a connection to healthy male figures, he doesn't know how to be with men as an adult. He doesn't know how to be with himself as an adult because he's a man as well. And he will seek compensatory ways to prove his worth in the world. And it's largely unconscious. You hear this so often, man, like the star football player still looks to the crowd to see if his dad's watching. And his dad's alive. It's just like he wants that approval still of the father, or of a man that he can look up to, that is familiar to him, like familiar in body and body type and so forth, right? And so for me, that question of compensation comes to how is that young boy brought up? You know, how does he detach healthily from the mother? Does the mother encourage that and allow that to happen? You know, I met someone the other day. It's a beautiful. So I was very impressed, man. And all things are being equal when I say this, right? Like she has a 13 and 11-year-old, and she is divorced, and they are very amicable. Her and her ex-husband, right? And they've got two beautiful boys. And they live in separate places, not super far. They're in the same state, but just quite far from each other. And she made the very painful decision because he really wanted to be with his boys more, right? Like he's like, it's age, I need them. Like, and she made the very painful decision to let him have them full time. And it's not because she's doesn't want her kids, or they have a very amicable, very beautiful relationship, right? But she knows that they need their father in this very critical time. So of course she sees them, wherever she is, like she's an amazing business person, businesswoman, she'll fly back for their games, for their stuff, like wherever she is, she prioritizes that. And she sees them very often, but primarily they are with him. And I thought to myself, wow, what a selfless act.
So rare in the modern world.
And I don't think it was part conscious, obviously, but it was just this drive that she knew she had to do that. And I gather as well, like, you know, part of that was because they had a great relationship, the ex-husband and like they were amicable, they were connected, they were communicative, like, and he's married, remarried, and all of that. But I think that's part of it, because they had such a great relationship. They could talk these things through and really hear each other and seek to understand each other, which is so important. I was never taught that. My parents never sought to understand each other. They just swore at each other and physically hit each other, and like it was just, they never did any of that. There was no seeking to understand. My mother would constantly complain about my father. If I didn't have you kids, I would be divorced, and that was the rhetoric, you know.
That's a pressure as a young man to hear that.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So long way of saying the importance of starting this earlier avoids the need for compensation and the need for masks and the need for false bravado and the need for excessive dominance over people and over self, and a disconnection from one's, you know, real heart. And men have hearts, man.
Yes. We do.
You know, we have a limbic system that, you know, regulates our emotions or helps us understand our emotional being, or we have an emotional self, you know.